The massive space station Nexus Prime hung in the void like a glittering jewel. Ships from dozens of different worlds docked at its many arms, creating a bustling hub of galactic commerce and diplomacy. Energy shields shimmered around sleek alien vessels while cargo haulers moved between the docking bays like busy insects. Ambassador Maria Torres stood at the observation deck, watching the controlled chaos through the transparent aluminum windows. Her brown eyes tracked the movement of ships, each one representing a different species, different technology, different way of thinking about the universe. In 3 hours, she would board one of those ships for a critical diplomatic mission to the Outer Rim territories. "Ma'am, the escort has arrived," said Lieutenant Commander Jackson, stepping up beside her. Torres nodded but didn't turn away from the window. "Which one is it?" Jackson pointed to a section of space where a new ship was approaching. It looked different from all the others. Where most alien vessels were smooth curves of metal and energy, this one was all angles and armor plating. Where others moved with graceful swoops, this one came forward in a straight line, steady and unchanging. "The UES Persistence," Jackson said. "Captain Sarah Chen commanding." Torres finally turned to look at the ship properly. The Persistence was big, probably twice the size of most of the other military vessels docked at the station. Its hull was covered in thick gray armor that looked like it could stop anything the galaxy could throw at it. Weapons bristled from every surface, but they weren't the elegant energy cannons favored by other species. These looked solid, mechanical, built for one purpose. "She's not much to look at, is she?" Jackson said. Before Torres could answer, a new voice cut through the observation deck. "Not much to look at? That primitive thing looks like it was built in a scrapyard." Both humans turned to see Admiral Kethvar approaching. The Zephyrian officer was tall and thin, his blue-gray skin gleaming under the station's lights. His uniform was pristine white with energy conduits running through it like veins of liquid light. Behind him walked 2 other alien officers. "Admiral," Torres said politely, "I wasn't expecting to see you here." Kethvar's large black eyes fixed on the approaching human ship. "I wanted to see this famous Terran warship for myself, the one that's supposed to escort our diplomatic convoy." He made a sound that might have been laughter. "I have to say I'm not impressed." The officer beside him, a crystalline being whose body reflected the lights of the station, spoke in a voice like wind chimes. "It moves so slowly. Our ships could circle it 3 times before it completed one maneuver." The third alien, covered in what looked like liquid metal, added, "And those weapons, are those actually projectile launchers? How wonderfully primitive. Do they still use gunpowder too?" Jackson stepped forward, his face reddening. "Those weapons have proven themselves in combat many times, sir. The Persistence has a distinguished service record." "Oh, I'm sure they have," Kethvar said, his tone dripping with false politeness. "Against pirates and raiders, no doubt. Ships that can barely fight back. But this mission takes us through contested space. If we encounter real military vessels, primitive kinetic weapons won't do much good against modern energy shields." Torres kept her expression neutral, but inside she was getting angry. She had read the Persistence's service record. Captain Chen and her crew had fought in the Centauri Wars, the Vegan conflict, and a dozen smaller actions. They had never lost a ship under their protection. "Perhaps you'd prefer to provide the escort yourself, Admiral?" she asked. Kethvar straightened, his chest swelling with pride. "As a matter of fact, yes. My flagship, the Star's Edge, is docked here as well. She's equipped with the latest quantum disruptors and phase cannons. Her shields can deflect anything, short of a supernova, and she's fast enough to outrun anything she can't outfight." The crystalline officer nodded agreement. "The Hegemony Vessel Crystal Spear is also available. Our plasma matrices can cut through any known armor. And my ship, the Void Dancer, can strike and fade before the enemy knows we were there," added the liquid metal being. Torres looked back out at the Persistence. The human ship had finished its approach and was moving into position near the docking arms. Even at this distance, she could see crew members moving around the hull, checking systems and making preparations. Everything they did looked methodical, careful, professional. "I appreciate the offers, gentlemen," she said. But Earth Command specifically assigned the Persistence to this mission. Captain Chen has experience in the Outer Rim. She knows the territory. Experience running from superior forces, perhaps, Kethvar said. That ship is a relic. Look at it. Thick armor because they can't build proper shields. Kinetic weapons because they don't understand energy manipulation. Slow speeds because their engines are inefficient. Lieutenant Commander Jackson had heard enough. With respect, Admiral, you don't know what you're talking about. Human ships are built for endurance and reliability. We don't need to run from fights because we're built to win them. The three alien officers exchanged glances and began laughing. It wasn't cruel laughter exactly, but it was condescending. The kind of laugh adults give when children say something foolish but harmless. My dear human, the crystalline being said, we're not trying to insult you. It's simply a matter of technological development. Your species is still young. You'll learn. In 1,000 years, maybe you'll develop real weapons, the liquid metal alien added. Until then, it's probably best to leave the serious fighting to those of us who understand it. Torres felt her jaw clench. She had spent months preparing for this mission, reading reports about pirate activity in the Outer Rim, studying intelligence about possible threats. The alien officers were treating it like a pleasure cruise, dismissing real dangers because they couldn't imagine their advanced technology failing them. Captain Chen's ship may not look like much to you, she said carefully, but it served. With honor. I'm confident it will do the same on this mission. Kethvar waved a dismissive hand. Of course. We're not suggesting the humans can't handle escort duty. Just that they shouldn't have to face real opposition. If serious trouble develops, ships like mine will handle it. The Persistence can protect the diplomats while the real warships deal with threats. Jackson looked like he wanted to say something, but Torres caught his eye and shook her head slightly. There was no point in arguing further. The alien officers had made up their minds about human capabilities, and nothing she could say would change that. If you'll excuse me, gentlemen, she said, I need to prepare for departure. The three aliens nodded politely and moved away, still discussing the primitive human ship in voices just loud enough to be heard. Torres watched them go, noting the confidence in their movements, the casual dismissal of any threat they might face. Ma'am, Jackson said quietly. Should I contact Captain Chen? Let her know what they're saying? Torres considered it. Sarah Chen had a reputation for being professional under any circumstances, but she was also human. She might not appreciate hearing how other species viewed her ship and crew. No, she decided. Captain Chen has enough to worry about. Besides, I suspect she's heard it all before. Through the observation window, she could see the Persistence completing its docking procedures. The ship looked solid and dependable, like a piece of Earth machinery built to last forever. It wasn't sleek or beautiful like the alien vessels, but there was something reassuring about its presence. Jackson followed her gaze. You know, ma'am, I've served on alien ships before. Beautiful designs, incredible technology. But when things got tough, when we really needed someone to count on... He paused. I'd rather have one of ours. Torres nodded. She had never served in the military, but she had spent enough time around spacers to understand what he meant. There was something about human engineering that was different from other species. Where others sought elegance or efficiency, humans built things to work under the worst possible conditions. A soft chime indicated an incoming message. Torres activated her personal communicator and heard Captain Chen's voice, calm and professional. Ambassador, Torres, this is Captain Chen. The Persistence is ready for your arrival. We'll be departing on schedule in 2 hours. Thank you, Captain. I'll be aboard shortly. Ma'am, are you aware that several other military vessels have requested permission to join our escort group? Torres glanced back toward where the alien officers had gone. Yes, Captain. What's your assessment? There was a brief pause. More ships mean more complications, ma'am. But if they want to tag along, we can work with them. The Persistence can handle the mission either way. Understood. See you soon, Captain. Torres closed the connection and gathered her things. In a few hours, they would be leaving the safety of Nexus Prime for the dangerous territory beyond. Pirates and raiders controlled much of the Outer Rim, preying on merchant vessels and diplomatic missions. The aliens were right about one thing. There was a real chance of encountering serious opposition. But as she took one last look at the human warship, Torres felt confident they would make it through. The Persistence might not look like much compared to the sleek alien vessels, but it had something they didn't. It had been built by a species that had spent thousands of years fighting wars on a single planet before taking those hard-learned lessons to the stars. The other species had developed their technology in isolation, each one assuming their way was best. Humans had learned their lessons through blood and sacrifice, building ships that could take punishment and keep fighting. Torres had read the history books. She knew what humans were capable of when pushed to their limits. As she walked toward the docking arm where the Persistence waited, she hoped they wouldn't have to prove it again. But if they did, she was confident Captain Chen and her crew would be ready. Behind her, through the observation windows, the alien warships gleamed like jewels in the starlight, beautiful and deadly in their own way. But the human ship sat among them like a gray wolf among peacocks, perhaps not as pretty but infinitely more dangerous than it appeared. The mission was about to begin. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Persistence, watching the last of the supply shuttles return from Nexus Prime. Her crew moved with quiet efficiency around her, running final checks on all systems. In 30 minutes, they would begin their journey to the Outer Rim territories. "Captain, we're receiving final clearance from Station Control," reported Lieutenant Park from the communication station. Chen nodded. "Thank you, Lieutenant. Any word from our escort volunteers?" "Admiral, Kethvar's ship is ready to depart. Same with the Crystal Spear and Void Dancer. They're requesting permission to take point position." Chen almost smiled. Of course they wanted to lead. Every species in the galaxy seemed to think they knew better than humans how to run a military operation. After 15 years in space, she had gotten used to it. "Grant permission. We'll maintain our planned course and speed." "Aye, Captain." Chen turned to her executive officer, Commander Williams. "What's our status, XO?" Williams consulted his tablet. "All systems green across the board. Weapons loaded and ready. Armor plating inspected and certified. We're carrying full fuel and supplies for a month-long operation." "Good. And our passenger?" "Ambassador Torres is secured in VIP quarters. She asked to be notified when we reach the jump point." Chen nodded and settled into her captain's chair. The Persistence was ready for whatever they might encounter. Her ship wasn't the fastest or the prettiest in the galaxy, but it was tough and reliable. More importantly, her crew knew their jobs. The bridge was quieter than most alien ships Chen had visited. No humming energy conduits or pulsing lights. Just solid controls and clear displays showing exactly what they needed to know. Human engineering, at its finest. Built by people who understood that in a crisis, you didn't want to waste time figuring out which pretty button to push. "Captain, we're receiving a priority transmission from Nexus Prime Control," Lieutenant Park said, his voice suddenly tense. "Put it through." The main screen lit up with the image of Station Commander Yex Tai, a four-armed being whose species Chen had never encountered before. The alien's multiple eyes were wide with what looked like panic. "All ships in the area, we have an emergency. Merchant Convoy Sierra 7 has sent a distress signal. They're under attack by unknown vessels approximately 6 light hours from your current position." Chen leaned forward. "How many ships in the convoy?" 12 merchant vessels carrying medical supplies and food to the colony worlds. No military escort." The station commander's voice was shaking. The attackers appeared to be a large raider force, at least 30 vessels. Before Chen could respond, Admiral Kethvar's voice came over the comm system. "This is Admiral Kethvar, of the Zephyrian Fleet. My ship group will respond immediately. Star's Edge, Crystal Spear, and Void Dancer are departing now." "Admiral, recommend we coordinate our response," Chen said calmly. 30 raiders is a significant force. Captain Chen, with respect, this requires fast ships and advanced weapons. Maintain your course and protect the ambassador. We'll handle this." Chen watched on her tactical display as the 3 alien warships broke away from their formation, their faster-than-light drives charging up with brilliant displays of energy. Within minutes, all 3 had vanished into hyperspace, leaving trails of exotic particles behind them. "Show off," muttered Lieutenant Park. Belay that, Lieutenant, Chen said, though she understood the sentiment. The alien ships had been eager to prove their superiority since arriving at Nexus Prime. This was their chance to show what advanced technology could accomplish. Captain, Commander Williams said, should we follow them? Chen considered. The convoy was 6 hours away at their current speed. By the time the Persistence arrived, the engagement would be long over, one way or another. The alien ships could reach the battle zone in less than 2 hours with their advanced drives. Maintain course, she decided, but plot a course to the convoy's last known position, and bring all systems to combat readiness. Aye, Captain. For the next hour, the bridge of the Persistence was tense with waiting. They received periodic updates from Nexus Prime, but no direct communication from the responding ships. Chen wasn't surprised. In her experience, alien commanders preferred to handle their own operations without human input. Then Lieutenant Park straightened at his station. Captain, I'm picking up combat transmissions. The engagement has started. Put it on speaker, the bridge filled with the crackling sounds of space combat. Energy weapons firing, shields colliding, damage reports. Chen listened carefully, trying to piece together what was happening 6 hours away. Star's Edge to Crystal Spear, they're using hit-and-run tactics, can't get a clean shot. Crystal Spear acknowledges. These raiders are more coordinated than expected, they're not running. Void Dancer taking heavy damage. My port engine is down. Requesting support. Chen frowned. The alien ships had expected to face a disorganized group of pirates, but this sounded like something else entirely. A coordinated fleet with experienced commanders. The transmissions continued for another 30 minutes, growing more desperate. The raiders weren't just numerous, they were good. They knew how to use their numbers effectively, swarming the alien ships and preventing them from using their superior firepower. Then came the transmission Chen had been dreading. Star's Edge to all ships. We are taking heavy casualties. The raider force is larger than reported. At least 50 vessels, possibly more. We need immediate reinforcement. Commander Williams looked at Chen. Captain? Set course for the engagement zone. Maximum speed. That's still 4 hours at our best speed, Captain. I know. Do it anyway. The Persistence changed course, its massive engines pushing the ship toward the distant battle. Chen knew they would probably arrive too late to affect the outcome, but she couldn't just sit and listen to Allied ships being destroyed. Over the next hour, the situation deteriorated rapidly. The alien ships, despite their advanced technology, were being overwhelmed by sheer numbers and superior tactics. Their energy, weapons, devastating at close range, were less effective against enemies that refused to stand still and fight. Crystal Spear is down to 40% shields, came one report. Void Dancer has lost main engines, we're drifting. Star's Edge requesting emergency withdrawal clearance. Chen felt her jaw tighten. The alien commanders had been so confident, so certain that their advanced ships could handle any threat. But confidence and technology meant nothing if you didn't understand your enemy. Captain, Lieutenant Park said quietly, Admiral Kethvar is requesting assistance. Put him through. The main screen showed the interior of the Star's Edge's bridge. It was chaos. Smoke filled the air, sparks flew from damaged consoles, and crew members rushed to repair battle damage. Admiral Kethvar looked haggard, his pristine uniform torn and stained. Captain Chen, he said, his earlier arrogance completely gone. We need help. This isn't what we expected. The raiders have us outnumbered and outmaneuvered. Can you assist? Chen looked at her tactical display. The Persistence was still 3 hours away from the battle zone. At the rate things were deteriorating, the alien ships would be destroyed or forced to retreat long before she arrived. Admiral, we're en route, but we won't reach you for several hours. Can you maintain position until then? Kethavar's expression was grim. I don't think so. We're taking too much damage. We may have to withdraw and let the convoy be destroyed. Understood, Admiral. Maintain your position as long as possible. Help is coming. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge of the Persistence in silence. Chen stared at the tactical display, calculating distances and timing. Even if the Persistence arrived in time, she would be facing 50 or more raider ships with a single vessel. "Captain," Commander Williams said, "what are your orders?" Chen was quiet for a long moment, thinking. The alien ships had rushed into battle confident in their superior technology, only to discover that the raiders they faced were more than simple pirates. This was an organized fleet with experienced commanders who knew how to fight. But Chen had advantages the aliens didn't. The Persistence had been built for exactly this kind of situation, outnumbered, outgunned, facing impossible odds. And her crew had trained for it their entire careers. "Maintain course and speed," she said finally. "And send a message to the convoy survivors. Tell them to hold on. The cavalry is coming." "Captain," Lieutenant Park said hesitantly, "shouldn't we call for additional reinforcements?" Chen shook her head. "No time. By the time more ships arrive, it'll be over. We go with what we have." She turned to address the entire bridge crew. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to face a fleet that just defeated 3 advanced alien warships. They outnumber us 50 to 1. They're experienced fighters, and they're not going to run away just because we show up." She paused, looking at each of her officers in turn. They were young, most of them, but they had trained under the best the Earth fleet had to offer. More importantly, they understood what it meant to be human in a galaxy that often looked down on their species. "But we have something they don't," she continued. "We have a ship built by people who spent thousands of years learning how to fight wars. We have weapons tested in conflicts across known space. And we have each other." Commander Williams smiled grimly. "Just another day at the office, Captain." Chen returned the smile. "Just another day. All stations prepare for combat. We're going to show these raiders what happens when they threaten innocent people." As the Persistence continued toward the distant battle, Chen felt a familiar calm settle over her. The alien ships had failed because they had expected an easy victory. They had relied on their superior technology and forgotten the most important lesson of warfare: know your enemy. The raiders thought they had won. They had defeated the advanced alien ships and were probably preparing to finish off the helpless convoy. They weren't expecting a single human warship to arrive and spoil their victory. Chen intended to make sure it was a lesson they never forgot. 3 hours later, the UES Persistence dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the battle zone. Captain Chen stood on her bridge, studying the tactical display with grim satisfaction. The situation was exactly as bad as she had expected. The key alien warships were gone. According to the sensor readings, they had retreated 2 hours ago, leaving behind debris fields and emergency beacons. The merchant convoy was scattered across a wide area of space, some ships destroyed, others drifting, powerless with their crews trapped inside. And surrounding them like wolves around wounded prey were the raiders. "Tactical report," Chen ordered. Lieutenant Commander Hayes, her tactical officer, looked up from his station. 53 raider vessels confirmed, Captain. Mixed classes, but most appear to be modified civilian ships with military-grade weapons. They're organized into 7 battle groups. Any sign of the convoy survivors? 4 merchant ships are still intact. They've formed a defensive cluster, but their shields are failing. Estimate they have maybe 20 minutes before the raiders. Finish them off. Chen nodded. It was what she had expected. The raiders were taking their time now, savoring their victory over the alien warships. They probably thought they had all the time in the world to pick apart the remaining merchants. "Captain," Lieutenant Park called from communications. "I'm receiving a transmission from the raider fleet, audio only." "Put it through." A harsh, guttural voice filled the bridge. "Unknown human vessel, this is Captain Vextar of the Iron Claw fleet. You are entering our operational area. Turn around and leave now, or share the fate of your alien friends." Chen walked to the center of the bridge, her hands clasped behind her back. Around her, the crew waited for her orders. She could feel their tension, their readiness for battle. They had trained for this moment their entire careers. "Lieutenant Park, open a channel." "Channel open, Captain." Chen's voice was calm and steady as she responded. "Captain Vextar, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earth ship Persistence. You are in violation of Galactic Convention by attacking civilian vessels. Release your hostages and surrender immediately. The response came back as harsh laughter. One ship? One single ship against my entire fleet? Human? Your species may be brave, but you are also very stupid. Last warning. Leave now or be destroyed. Chen looked around her bridge. Her officers were watching her, waiting. Commander Williams raised an eyebrow questioningly. Lieutenant Hayes had his hand hovering over his weapons console. They were ready for whatever she decided. Lieutenant Park, broadcast this message on all frequencies, she said. Emergency services, all vessels, civilian and military. This is Captain Chen of the UES Persistence. We are engaging a hostile raider fleet to protect civilian vessels under attack. Any ships capable of rescue operations should stand by to assist survivors. She paused, then added, Captain Vextar, you and your fleet have 30 seconds to surrender and release your hostages. This is your only warning. The bridge was silent for a moment. Then Vextar's voice came back, filled with disbelief and amusement. 30 seconds? You're giving me 30 seconds? Human, I have 53 warships, you have one. What exactly do you think you can accomplish? Chen didn't respond. Instead, she turned to her crew. All stop. Bring us to 0 relative velocity. Captain? Commander Williams questioned. All stop, XO. Right here, right now. The Persistence's engines shut down, leaving the ship floating motionless in space. On the tactical display, Chen could see the raider fleet beginning to move, surrounding her ship like predators closing in for the kill. Tactical, bring all weapons systems online. Engineering, divert all non-essential power to weapons and shields. Weapons hot, Captain, Hayes reported. All tubes loaded and ready. Captain, Lieutenant Park said. The raiders are demanding our surrender. Captain Vextar says he'll spare our lives if we power down and prepare to be boarded. Chen checked the chronometer on her display. 25 seconds since her ultimatum. No response. Continue the countdown. Around the bridge, her crew went through their final preparations. Damage control teams reported ready. Engineering confirmed. All systems at peak efficiency. Medical bay was prepared for casualties. The Persistence was a machine built for one purpose, and every part of that machine was ready to do its job. Captain, Hayes said, the raiders are moving into attack formation. They're surrounding us on all sides. Chen nodded. Distance to nearest hostiles? 15,000 kilometers and closing. They'll be in weapons range in 2 minutes. Captain, Commander Williams said quietly, they do outnumber us 50-1. Chen turned to look at her executive officer. Williams had been with her for 3 years through the Vegan conflict and a dozen smaller engagements. He had seen what the Persistence could do when pushed to its limits. XO, do you remember the Battle of Proxima Station? Williams smiled grimly. We were outnumbered 8-1 that day. And the result? We sent 6 enemy ships to scrap yards and captured the other 2. The Centauri ambush? 12-1 odds. We broke their entire battle line. Chen turned back to the tactical display. 50-1 is just a bigger number, Commander. The principle remains the same. The chronometer continued to count down. 20 seconds. 15. 10. Captain, Lieutenant Park said urgently. The raiders are demanding to know what we're waiting for. They want to know why we're just sitting here. Tell them they'll find out soon enough. 5 seconds. 4. 3. 2. 1. Time, Chen announced, calmly. For a moment, nothing happened. The Persistence sat motionless in space while 53 raider ships closed in from all directions. Then the raiders opened fire. The space around the human ship lit up with weapons fire. Energy beams, plasma bolts, and missile trails converged on the Persistence from every angle. The raiders had expected to overwhelm the single ship with sheer volume of fire. But the Persistence had been built to take punishment. Its thick armor plating absorbed energy blasts that would have crippled lighter vessels. Its defensive systems intercepted incoming missiles with walls of projectile fire. Its shields held against attacks that had broken alien warships. Damage. Report, Chen called. Minor hull scoring on deck 7 and 12, Williams reported. No significant damage. Shields holding at 96%. Captain, Hayes said. They're moving closer, trying to concentrate their fire. Chen smiled. It was exactly what she had been waiting for. The raiders had assumed that their energy weapons would make short work of the human ship. When that failed, they were doing what desperate opponents always did, getting closer, hoping that more concentrated fire would succeed where dispersed attacks had failed. They were playing right into her hands. Tactical, you have the board. Commence firing. Aye, Captain, commencing firing. What happened next was unlike anything the raiders had ever experienced. The weapons they had dismissed as primitive kinetic launchers revealed their true nature. Railguns accelerated projectiles to significant fractions of light speed. Missiles with fusion warheads locked onto targets with inhuman precision. Point defense systems created impenetrable barriers of metal and explosives. But it wasn't just the weapons that made the difference. It was how they were used. Where the alien ships had fired in spectacular displays of energy and light, the Persistence fired with mechanical precision. Every shot was calculated, targeted, timed to perfection. There were no wasted shots, no missed opportunities. The first raider ship to die probably never knew what hit it. One moment it was closing, in for the kill. The next it was expanding debris as a railgun round punched through its hull at near light speed. The second ship managed to detect the incoming projectile but couldn't react fast enough. Its captain had just enough time to realize his error before the missile struck his bridge. The third ship tried to retreat, but the human targeting systems had already locked on. Distance meant nothing to weapons that traveled at light speed. Captain, Hayes reported. 3 confirmed kills. Raiders are breaking formation, trying to scatter. Chen nodded. Weapons free. Engage targets of opportunity. The Persistence began to move, its massive bulk turning with surprising grace. As it rotated, different weapon systems came to bear on different targets. The ship became a castle of death, its guns reaching out across vast distances to touch raider vessels with lethal precision. The raiders were learning what every human military officer understood. In space combat, there was nowhere to hide. Energy dissipated over distance, but kinetic projectiles carried their full force across the void. Missiles could course-correct and follow fleeing targets. And human targeting systems refined through centuries of warfare never missed. 4 more confirmed kills, Hayes reported. The raiders are trying to regroup. Let them, Chen said. It won't help. On the tactical display she could see the raider fleet's predicament. They had expected to face a single weak ship that would crumble under concentrated fire. Instead, they were facing a fortress that shrugged off their attacks and struck back with devastating accuracy. Some of the raiders were trying to flee, but the Persistence's weapons had longer range than their engines could provide escape velocity. Others were attempting to coordinate their attacks, but human electronic warfare systems were disrupting their communications. The battle that the raiders had expected to be a quick massacre was turning into a systematic demolition. Captain, Lieutenant Park called. I'm receiving surrender requests from multiple raider vessels. Chen considered. Some of the raiders were probably just criminals who had gotten in over their heads, but others were clearly professional pirates who had been preying on innocent merchants for years. Tell them to power down their weapons and prepare to be boarded. Any ship that continues to resist will be destroyed. Aye, Captain. The battle continued for another 10 minutes, but the outcome was never in doubt. The Persistence moved through the raider fleet like a force of nature, destroying any ship that continued to fight and accepting the surrender of those smart enough to give up. When it was over, 41 raider ships had been destroyed or disabled. 12 had surrendered. The Iron Claw fleet, which had terrorized the sector for years, had been broken in less than 20 minutes by a single human warship. Captain, Williams said quietly, we're receiving transmissions from the surviving merchant ships. They're requesting permission to approach and render assistance. Chen nodded. Grant permission, and signal the convoy survivors that medical teams are standing by. She looked around her bridge, taking in the calm professionalism of her crew. They had just fought and won a battle against impossible odds, but they showed no signs of excitement or celebration. This was their job, and they had done it well. "Good work, everyone," she said simply. As the Persistence began coordinating rescue operations, Chen allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. The aliens had mocked her ship, called it primitive and slow. They had rushed off to fight the raiders with their advanced technology and superior attitudes, and they had failed. But the Persistence had succeeded, not despite its human design, but because of it. Her ship had been built by a species that understood war, and her crew had been trained by people who knew that victory came not from having the best weapons, but from using whatever weapons you had better than your enemy used, theirs. The battle was over. The convoy was safe. And the galaxy was a little bit safer place. The battle began exactly as Captain Chen had expected it would. The raiders, confident in their overwhelming numbers, opened fire first. Space around the Persistence erupted in a deadly light show. 53 ships poured everything they had at the single human vessel. Energy beams sliced through vacuum, plasma bolts painted trails of superheated gas, and missiles streaked toward their target like angry hornets. Inside the Persistence, the crew felt the ship shudder as the barrage struck home. Emergency lights flickered, and the deck plating vibrated under their feet. But the thick armor held, and the shields absorbed what the armor could not. "Damage report," Chen called out, her voice steady despite the chaos outside. "Minor hull breaches, on decks 4 and 9, Commander Williams reported from his damage control station. "Automatic systems have sealed them. Shield strength at 87% and holding." Chen nodded. The raiders were throwing everything they had at her ship, but the Persistence had been designed to take this kind of punishment. Unlike the sleek alien vessels that relied on speed and maneuverability to avoid damage, human ships were built to absorb enemy fire and keep fighting. "Captain," Lieutenant Hayes called from Tactical, "enemy vessels are closing to point-blank range. They're trying to overload our defenses." "Let them come," Chen replied calmly. "All weapons prepare to engage." The raiders had made their first mistake by assuming that human kinetic weapons were primitive. They were about to make their second mistake by getting close enough for those weapons to show their true effectiveness. Captain Vexitar's voice crackled over the comm system, filled with savage glee. "Is that the best your famous human engineering can do? Your shields are already failing. In 5 minutes, you'll be nothing but scrap metal floating in space." Chen didn't bother to respond. Instead, she turned to her weapons officer. "Lieutenant Hayes, you have permission to fire. Show them what human engineering can really do." "Aye, Captain. All weapons firing." What happened next was unlike anything the raiders had ever seen. The Persistence had been motionless for the past several minutes, absorbing their attacks like a patient predator. Now it revealed why it had been waiting. The ship's main railgun fired first. A projectile no larger than a telephone pole accelerated to 12% of light speed in less than a second. The magnetic coils that launched it generated more energy than most planets used in a year. The raider ship it hit simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, firing enthusiastically at the human vessel. The next moment, it was an expanding cloud of superheated metal and plasma. The projectile had hit with such force that it didn't just punch through the hull, it vaporized everything it touched. "Target destroyed," Hayes reported with professional calm, as if he had just swatted a fly. The second railgun fired 3 seconds later. Another raider ship vanished in a brief flash of light. Then the missile batteries opened up. Human missiles were different from the flashy energy weapons favored by other species. They were patient, methodical, impossible to stop once they locked onto a target. They didn't rely on overwhelming power. They relied on intelligence and persistence. Each missile was essentially a small spacecraft with its own sensors, computer, and maneuvering system. They could dodge defensive fire, change course to avoid obstacles, and even coordinate with other missiles to overwhelm enemy defenses. The raiders discovered this the hard way, as dozens of missiles swarmed toward their ships. They fired desperately at the incoming weapons, managing to destroy some, but the rest kept coming. When the first missile struck, It punched through armor plating and detonated its fusion warhead inside the target ship. The explosion tore the vessel apart from within, but the real surprise came from the Persistence's point defense systems. What the aliens had mistaken for primitive projectile weapons were actually sophisticated networks of computer-controlled guns that could fill space with metal. As the raiders closed in, thinking they could overwhelm the human ship at close range, they flew directly into walls of projectiles moving at supersonic speeds. Ships that had survived the railgun fire and missile attacks found themselves shredded by thousands of small rounds that cut through their hulls like paper. "Enemy formation is breaking up," Hayes reported. "They're trying to scatter." Chen watched the tactical display as the raider fleet dissolved into chaos. Ships that had approached in organized battle groups were now fleeing in all directions, their coordination completely broken, but there was nowhere to run in space. The laws of physics were absolute, and the raiders were learning that lesson the hard way. "Captain," Lieutenant Park called from communications, "I'm detecting multiple surrender signals from enemy vessels." "Too late for that," Chen replied. "Any ship that continues to maneuver aggressively is to be considered hostile. Weapons free on all targets." The Persistence continued its methodical destruction of the raider fleet. Unlike the chaotic energy battles favored by other species, this was surgical, precise, calculated. Every shot had a purpose. Every missile had a target. Nothing was wasted. Captain Vexitar's ship, a heavily modified cruiser that served as the fleet's flagship, tried to make a run for the edge of the system. But human targeting computers had already calculated its trajectory, accounting for acceleration, course changes, and evasive maneuvers. The railgun round that killed the Iron Claw flagship traveled for almost 30 seconds before it found its target. Vexitar probably thought he had escaped when the round struck his engine compartment, tearing through his ship from stern to bow and leaving nothing but debris. "Flagship destroyed," Hayes reported. "Remaining enemy vessels are requesting quarter." Chen looked at the tactical display. Of the 53 ships that had started the battle, only 12 were still intact and maneuvering. The rest were either destroyed completely or drifting powerless in space. "Signal all remaining hostile vessels," she ordered. "Power down weapons and engines immediately. Prepare to be boarded. Any ship that fails to comply will be destroyed." The response was immediate. The surviving raiders shut down their system so quickly that Chen almost smiled. They had learned respect for human firepower the hard way. "Captain," Williams called, "we're receiving distress signals from several damaged enemy vessels. Some have hull breaches and are losing atmosphere." Chen considered. These were pirates and murderers who had been terrorizing innocent merchants. But they were also sentient beings, and the laws of space were clear about rendering aid to ships in distress. "Deploy rescue teams," she ordered. "Anyone who wants to surrender will be given medical assistance, but maintain full security protocols. These people are dangerous." As the Persistence began coordinating rescue operations, Chen allowed herself to review the battle. From start to finish, it had lasted exactly 18 minutes and 37 seconds. The Iron Claw fleet, which had controlled this sector for over 2 years, had been completely destroyed as an effective fighting force. The key had been understanding what the enemy expected. The raiders had faced alien warships that relied on energy weapons and advanced technology. They had developed tactics specifically designed to counter those advantages: hit-and-run attacks, overwhelming numbers, disrupting enemy coordination. But they had never faced human weapons before. Energy dissipated over distance, but railgun projectiles carried their full kinetic force across light years. Plasma beams could be deflected or absorbed, but fusion warheads detonated with the same force whether they hit yesterday or next week. More importantly, the raiders had never faced human tactical thinking. Where alien commanders tended to rely on the superiority of their technology, human officers were taught to assume they would be outnumbered and outgunned. They planned for the worst-case scenario and then figured out how to win anyway. "Captain," Lieutenant Park reported, "I'm receiving a transmission from one of the merchant vessels. The convoy leader wants to thank us personally." "Put it through." The main screen showed the bridge of a cargo hauler. The captain was a Rigelian, her blue skin marked with the ritual scars of a merchant family. She looked exhausted but grateful. "Captain Chen, this is Captain Yulta of the merchant vessel Bright Star. On behalf of my crew and the other survivors, I want to thank you. We thought we were going to die when the alien warships retreated." "You're welcome, Captain. How many casualties do you have?" 7 dead, 23 wounded. It could have been much worse. The raiders were taking their time, enjoying themselves. They probably would have killed us all eventually. Chen felt a familiar anger burning in her chest. Pirates and raiders were a fact of life in the galaxy, but the ones who enjoyed killing were the worst kind of scum. "Captain Yulta, we're going to escort your convoy to its destination. No one else is going to hurt you on my watch." The Rigelian captain's eyes widened with surprise. "Captain, your mission was just to escort the ambassador. We can't ask you to go out of your way." "You're not asking. I'm volunteering. The galaxy is dangerous enough without letting pirates think they can attack helpless merchants." After the transmission ended, Chen walked to the observation port and looked out at the debris field that had once been the Iron Claw fleet. Pieces of destroyed ships drifted past, some still glowing from the heat of their destruction. "Captain," Commander Williams said, joining her at the window, "the alien warships are requesting permission to return. Admiral Cathvar wants to discuss the situation." Chen almost laughed. The alien officers who had been so dismissive of human capabilities now wanted to talk. They had rushed off to fight the raiders with their advanced ships and superior attitudes, only to be defeated and forced to retreat. Now they wanted to understand how a single human vessel had accomplished what their entire battle group could not. "Tell the Admiral he's welcome to return, but he'll have to keep up. We're not slowing down for anyone." Williams smiled. "Aye, Captain." As the Persistence began forming up the merchant convoy for the journey to their destination, Chen now reflected on the battle they had just won. The aliens would probably spend months analyzing what had happened, trying to understand how their advanced technology had failed against supposedly primitive human weapons. They would miss the point entirely. It wasn't about the weapons. It was about the people using them. Humans had learned to fight through necessity, developing tactics and strategies through thousands of years of warfare. They didn't rely on having the best technology because they had learned that victory usually went to whoever was better prepared, better trained, and more determined. The raiders had thought they were facing just another alien warship with fancy energy weapons and pretty shields. Instead, they had encountered something much more dangerous, a ship crewed by humans who understood that sometimes the most important battles were the ones where you were outnumbered 50-1. And as the convoy moved toward safety under the protection of the Persistence, Chen knew that word of this battle would spread throughout the galaxy. Pirates and raiders would think twice before attacking merchant vessels in human-protected space. The galaxy had just become a safer place, one destroyed raider fleet at a time. 6 hours after the battle ended, the 3 alien warships returned to find a scene they had never expected to witness. The UES Persistence hung motionless in space, surrounded by the organized activity of a successful rescue operation. Human shuttles moved between the debris field and the merchant vessels, transferring wounded crew members and delivering medical supplies. Engineering teams worked to repair damaged ships, while security personnel processed surrendering raiders. Admiral Cathvar stood on the bridge of his flagship Star's Edge, staring at the tactical display in disbelief. Where 53 raider vessels had been when his fleet retreated, now only debris remained. 12 damaged ships sat under human guard, their crews in custody. "Admiral," his communications officer said hesitantly, "we're receiving a transmission from the human vessel. Put it through." Captain Chen's image appeared on the main screen. She looked calm and professional, showing no signs that she had just fought and won a battle against impossible odds. Behind her, Cathvar could see the quiet efficiency of a human bridge crew going about their duties. "Admiral Cathvar, welcome back. I trust your ship suffered no permanent damage during your earlier engagement." Cathvar felt his face flush with embarrassment. The human captain was being polite, but they both knew what had really happened. His advanced battle group had been defeated and forced to retreat, while her single ship had destroyed the entire Raider fleet. Captain Chen, Our ships required repairs after the engagement. We withdrew to ensure the safety of our crews. Of course, Chen replied diplomatically. The raiders were more organized than intelligence reports indicated. We were fortunate to arrive when we did. Fortunate. Kethvar almost laughed at the understatement. What he had witnessed was not fortune. It was professional competence at the highest level. Captain, if I may ask, how did you accomplish this? The same raiders that defeated our combined battle group. You destroyed them in less than 20 minutes. Chen was quiet for a moment, as if considering how to explain something obvious to someone who should already understand it. Admiral, may I ask what your battle plan was when you engaged the raiders? Kethvar straightened defensively. Standard formation attack. Use our superior firepower and technology to overwhelm their numerical advantage. And when that didn't work, we adjusted our tactics. Attempted to use our speed advantage to avoid their concentrated fire while maintaining our energy weapon effectiveness. Chen nodded patiently. Admiral, did your intelligence reports indicate anything unusual about this particular raider group? They were described as typical pirates, disorganized, poorly equipped, operating individually rather than as a coordinated force. But they weren't, were they? They fought like a military unit. Coordinated attacks, disciplined formations, experienced leadership. Kethvar felt increasingly uncomfortable. Yes, that's true, they were much more capable than expected. So your battle plan, based on fighting disorganized pirates, failed when you encountered organized military opposition. It wasn't a question, and Kethvar didn't try to answer it. The human captain was pointing out, with devastating politeness, that his battle group had failed because they had made assumptions rather than adapting to reality. Captain Chen, he said finally, what would you have done in our position? The same thing, probably. Most commanders develop tactics based on available intelligence. When that intelligence proves wrong, you have to adapt quickly or face defeat. But you didn't face defeat. You won decisively against the same force that defeated us. Chen seemed to consider her words carefully. Admiral, human ships are designed differently than yours. We build them assuming we'll be outnumbered and outgunned in every engagement. Our weapons, our tactics, our training, everything is based on fighting superior forces and winning anyway. But surely your weapons aren't that much more advanced than ours. For the first time, Chen smiled slightly. They're not more advanced, Admiral. They're different. Energy weapons are elegant and efficient, but they have limitations. Kinetic weapons are crude and require more resources, but they're also more reliable under extreme conditions. She paused, then added, more importantly, we've been using these weapons for centuries. We know exactly what they can and cannot do. We train constantly with them. When we go into battle, there are no surprises. Kethvar thought about his own weapons officers who relied heavily on automated systems and computer targeting. They were competent, but they had never faced an enemy that forced them to push their equipment to its absolute limits. Captain, would you be willing to share some of your tactical data with our fleet commanders? We clearly have much to learn. Of course, Admiral. Professional cooperation benefits everyone. After the transmission ended, Kethvar remained on his bridge, staring at the debris field that had once been the Iron Claw fleet. His officers moved quietly around him, also processing what they had witnessed. The crystalline officer from the Crystal Spear contacted him privately. Admiral, I've been analyzing the sensor data from the human ship's engagement. Their weapons systems are remarkable. In what way? They fired a total of 47 railgun rounds during the battle. 46 confirmed hits, 1 miss which struck a piece of debris that was obscuring their intended target. Their accuracy rate was essentially perfect. Kethvar felt a chill run through him. What about their missile systems? 63 missiles launched, 58 successful target acquisitions. The 5 that missed were intercepted by enemy defensive fire, but even those forced the targets to maneuver into positions where other weapons could engage them more effectively. So they weren't just more powerful, they were more accurate. Much more accurate, Admiral. And their targeting computers seemed to predict enemy movement several seconds in advance. They were firing at where ships would be, not where they were. Kethvar closed his eyes. His own battle group had fired hundreds of energy blasts during their engagement, achieving perhaps a 20% hit rate. The human ship had achieved near-perfect accuracy while fighting 53 opponents simultaneously. Meanwhile, aboard the Persistence, Captain Chen was dealing with her own aftermath. Ambassador Torres had returned from the merchant convoy, where she had been coordinating medical assistance for the wounded. "Captain, I've just finished speaking with the convoy leaders. They want to recommend you and your crew for the Galactic Service Medal." Chen shook her head. "That's not necessary, Ambassador. We were just doing our job." "Just doing your job? Captain, you faced odds that would have terrified most military commanders. A 50-to-1 numerical disadvantage against experienced opponents. Ma'am, with respect, the odds weren't that bad. Most of those raiders were converted civilian ships with inexperienced crews. Only about a dozen were serious military threats." Torres stared at her. "Only a dozen serious military threats. Captain, that's still 12-to-1 odds." Chen shrugged. "The Persistence was designed to handle those kinds of numbers, Ambassador. That's what human ships do." Commander Williams, who had been listening to the conversation, added, "Captain, the alien officers are pretty impressed. They keep asking how we achieved such high accuracy rates." "It's not complicated," Chen replied. "We practice. Every day. For years. Our gunners know their weapons better than most people know their own families. When the shooting starts, there are no surprises." Torres walked to the observation port and looked out at the rescue operation still continuing in the debris field. Human medical teams were working alongside alien doctors to treat the wounded, both friendly and enemy. It was a sight she had seen before. Humans fighting with devastating efficiency, then immediately switching to compassionate rescue work. "Captain, may I ask you something personal?" "Of course, Ambassador." "Do you enjoy this? The fighting? I mean..." Chen was quiet for a long moment. "No, ma'am. I don't enjoy fighting. I enjoy protecting people. The fighting is just what we have to do sometimes to accomplish that. The aliens don't understand that, do they? Most of them don't. They see our weapons and our tactics and think we're some kind of warrior race that loves violence. They don't understand that we became good at fighting because we had to be. It was either get good at it or watch innocent people die." Torres nodded. She had spent years studying human military history, trying to understand why her species had been so successful in their expansion into space. Other races had developed faster ships, more powerful weapons, more advanced technology. But humans had developed something else, the ability to win when winning seemed impossible. "Captain," Lieutenant Park called from the communication station, "we're receiving a message from Nexus Prime. They want a full report on the engagement. Tell them they'll have it within 6 hours. Include our recommendations for improved convoy security in this sector." "Aye, Captain. Also, sir, we're getting requests for interviews from several news organizations. Apparently, word about the battle is already spreading." Chen grimaced. She hated dealing with reporters. "Standard response. Refer all inquiries to Fleet Public Relations." "Already done, Captain." As the rescue operations continued, word of the battle did indeed spread throughout the galaxy. The story varied depending on who was telling it, but the basic facts remained the same. A single human warship had destroyed an entire raider fleet that had just defeated 3 advanced alien vessels. In some versions of the story, the Persistence had used secret superweapons. In others, Captain Chen was described as some kind of tactical genius who had outmaneuvered her opponents through brilliant strategy. The truth was both simpler and more complex. The Persistence had won because it was crewed by professionals who understood their job and had trained extensively to do it well. They had faced a situation they had prepared for their entire careers, and they had executed their training flawlessly. But that truth was harder to accept than stories about secret weapons or tactical genius. It suggested that human success wasn't based on luck or advanced technology, but on simple competence applied consistently over time. As the convoy prepared to resume its journey, now under the protection of 4 warships instead of 1, Captain Chen made her final log entry about the engagement. Personal log, Captain Sarah Chen. UES Persistence. We successfully engaged and neutralized a pirate fleet threatening civilian vessels in the Outer Rim sector. Enemy force consisted of 53 vessels of various classes. 41 were destroyed, 12 surrendered. No human casualties. Convoy is secure and proceeding to destination under escort. She paused, then added, "The alien warships that initially responded to the distress call have rejoined our formation. Admiral Kethvar has requested tactical consultation regarding human weapon systems and combat doctrine. Recommend approval of this request. Professional cooperation benefits. All spacefaring species." Chen closed the log and looked around her bridge. Her crew was back to normal operations, monitoring systems and coordinating with the convoy ships. The battle might have impressed the aliens, but for the crew of the Persistence, it was just another day at the office. Outside the observation ports, the convoy moved steadily toward its destination. Merchant ships carrying food and medical supplies to colony worlds, protected by warships crewed by people who understood that some things were worth fighting for. The galaxy was vast and dangerous, full of pirates and raiders who preyed on the innocent. But it was also full of people willing to stand up to those threats, to put themselves in harm's way so others could live in peace. And sometimes, when the odds seemed impossible and the situation looked hopeless, those people were human. The convoy disappeared into hyperspace, leaving behind only empty vacuum and the slowly expanding debris of the Iron Claw fleet. But the story of what had happened would continue to spread, carrying with it a simple message that would reach every corner of the galaxy. Humanity had arrived among the stars, and they had brought with them something more valuable than advanced technology or superior firepower. They had brought the determination to protect those who could not protect. The silver towers of New Eden Colony gleamed in the light of the alien sun. 50 years of human effort had turned this distant world into a thriving home for 30,000 people. Today was supposed to be a celebration. Captain Jack Reed stood at the main viewport of Defense Station Alpha, watching the anniversary parade wind through the colony's central plaza. Colorful banners fluttered in the artificial breeze created by the environmental systems. Children laughed and played while adults shared stories of the early colony days. "Beautiful sight, isn't it?" asked Lieutenant Mark Davis, joining him at the window. Reed nodded. "Hard to believe we've been here half a century already." "Sir," called a voice from the monitoring station, "we're detecting multiple objects approaching from the outer system." Reed turned, his celebration mood vanishing instantly. "Identification?" "None, sir. They're not responding to hails." Reed moved quickly to the central console. The display showed 6 large objects moving at high speed toward New Eden. "Sound yellow alert, notify Governor Grant." Within minutes, Governor Thomas Grant arrived at the command center, his formal celebration clothes looking out of place among the uniformed staff. "What's the situation, Captain?" Grant asked, his face tight with concern. 6 unidentified vessels. "Approaching, sir. No response to communications." Grant frowned. "Could it be a malfunction?" "I've checked all systems," Lieutenant Davis said. "Everything's working perfectly. Those ships are deliberately ignoring us." Reed studied the trajectory data. "They'll reach orbit in 15 minutes. I recommend we activate defensive systems and begin civilian shelter protocols." "Isn't that premature?" Grant hesitated. "Today of all days?" A warning alarm blared across the command center. "Energy spike," shouted the sensor operator. "They're powering weapons." Reed didn't wait for the governor's approval. "Sound red alert. All personnel to battle stations. Begin immediate civilian evacuation to the underground shelters." The peaceful celebration dissolved into panic as alarm sirens wailed across the colony. Security forces rushed to direct the frightened colonists toward shelter entrances. In her laboratory at the edge of the colony, Dr. Emma Wilson looked up from her work on the experimental drive system as the alarms began to sound. Through her window, she could see people running for safety. "What's happening?" asked one of her assistants. Before she could answer, a blinding flash lit up the sky. The defense station's shields flared as they absorbed the first volley from the alien ships. Get to the shelters, Emma ordered her team. Now! The team rushed out, but Emma hesitated, quickly transferring her research data to a portable drive. This work was too important to lose. Back at the defense station, Reed and his crew fought desperately to mount a response. Return fire with all available weapons, Reed commanded. New Eden's defense cannons fired into space, but the alien vessels easily evaded the shots. Their technology was clearly superior. "Sir, they've broken through the outer shield layer," reported Lieutenant Davis. Reed grabbed the communication system. "All colony residents, this is not a drill. Proceed immediately to emergency shelters. I repeat, this is not a drill." The ground, chaos reigned. Lieutenant Davis had left the command center to help with the evacuation. He directed a group of frightened colonists toward a shelter entrance. "Move quickly, but don't push," he shouted over the noise of distant explosions. "Everyone will get inside." A mother with 2 small children stumbled. Davis rushed to help her up, lifting the younger child in his arms. "This way," he said, guiding them to safety. Above, the battle was turning into a slaughter. 3 of the Yao colony's defense platforms had already been destroyed. Captain Reed's station was the only one still functioning. "Governor," Reed said grimly, "you need to send a distress call to Earth." Grant nodded, his earlier reluctance gone. He moved to the emergency communication station and activated the quantum entanglement transmitter, the colony's fastest link, to Earth. "This is Governor Thomas Grant of New Eden Colony," he began, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. "We are under attack by unknown forces, multiple ships of advanced design. Our defenses are failing. We request immediate military assistance." Another explosion rocked the station. Lights flickered. "Shields at 12%, someone reported. Reed looked at the governor. "Sir, you need to get to a shelter." "I'm staying," Grant replied. "With respect, sir, the colony will need leadership after this attack. We can't both be here if this station falls." Grant hesitated, then nodded. "Keep transmitting data to Earth as long as you can." As the governor headed for the evacuation pod, another blast hit the station. Reed was thrown against a console, blood trickling from a cut on his forehead. "Captain," Lieutenant Davis called over the communication system, "we've got most civilians in the shelters, but we're seeing ground forces landing in the eastern sector." Reed struggled back to his feet. "They're not just bombarding us, they're invading." Outside Dr. Wilson's research facility, sleek craft were landing. Strange figures in dark armor emerged, moving with disturbing precision toward the colony's key structures. Emma watched from behind a fallen wall section. The aliens were methodically making their way toward the research buildings. They weren't shooting randomly, they were targeting specific locations. "They know what they're looking for," she whispered to herself. With the portable drive clutched in her hand, she crept away from her lab, keeping to the shadows. She needed to reach the shelters and warn the others about what she'd seen. In the command center, Captain Reed watched helplessly as the aliens systematically destroyed the colony's defenses. "Send all data to Earth," he ordered as warning lights flashed around him. "Make sure they know what happened here." The last transmission went out just as the command center's roof tore open. Reed looked up to see one of the alien ships hovering. Directly above them, its weapons pointed downward. His last thought was of Earth and whether they would be ready for what was coming. In the darkness of the underground shelter, Governor Grant received the news of the defense station's destruction. Captain Reed and his brave crew were gone. "What do they want?" someone asked in the crowded space. Grant had no answer. But in Tassim, another section of the shelter complex, Dr. Wilson was putting together the pieces. The aliens had targeted the research sections first. They'd gone straight for the data centers and communication hubs. "They want our technology," she told Lieutenant Davis when he checked on the civilians in her section. "And I think I know which technology they're after." Davis looked at the drive in her hand. "Your experimental work?" She nodded grimly. "We have to get this information to Earth. Whatever these aliens are, they're not just here for conquest. They're hunting for something specific." Above them, The aliens continued their methodical takeover of humanity's most advanced colony, unaware that their attack had just set in motion events that would awaken forces long kept dormant, forces that even they might learn to fear. The distress call from New Eden Colony reached Earth 16 hours after the attack began. Communications officer Lisa Taylor was alone in the monitoring station when the quantum entanglement system activated. The message was broken and filled with static, but the fear in Governor Grant's voice came through clearly. Under attack, unknown forces, advanced ships, defenses failing, immediate assistance. Lisa's hands shook as she hit the emergency alert button. Within minutes, Admiral James Walker burst into the room, still pulling on his uniform jacket. "Play it again," he ordered. After hearing the message twice, Walker's face had turned to stone. "Get me direct links to all other colonies now." But as they tried to contact humanity's other outposts, a grim pattern emerged. 3 more colonies had gone silent in the past 12 hours. "This isn't random," Walker said quietly. "It's coordinated." He turned to his aide. "Call an emergency council meeting and get me Director Miller from Special Weapons." 3 hours later, Earth's Leadership Council sat around a large table in the underground command center beneath what had once been called Washington, D.C. The mood was grim as Admiral Walker finished briefing them on the attacks. 4 colonies hit simultaneously, he said. New Eden was the only one that managed to get a distress call out. The others went dark without warning. "What kind of force are we looking at?" asked one of the civilian leaders. "Unknown," Walker admitted. "But they took out our most heavily defended colony in under an hour. That suggests technology far beyond our current capabilities." Director Olivia Miller, head of Earth's Special Weapons Division, spoke up. "Admiral, what's your recommended response?" "I've already mobilized the fleet," Walker said. "But even at maximum speed, it will take our ships weeks to reach the attacked colonies." The council president leaned forward. "Then what options do we have for immediate response?" A heavy silence filled the room. Finally, an older man at the end of the table cleared his throat. General Robert Stone had been quiet until now. His weathered face looked even older under the harsh lights. "There is one option," he said slowly. "But it's classified beyond this room." Director Miller's head snapped up. "General, you can't be suggesting—" "I am," Stone cut her off. The council president looked between them. "Would someone care to explain?" General Stone pressed a button, and the room darkened. A holographic display appeared in the center of the table, showing what appeared to be a military facility built inside a massive ice cave. "Project Titan," Stone said. "Started 80 years ago after we discovered the alien wreckage in the Kuiper Belt." Murmurs spread around the table. "Most of you know we reverse-engineered some of that technology," Stone continued. "What you don't know is that we did more than just study their weapons and propulsion systems." The hologram changed to show what looked like medical pods, each containing a human figure. "We found a way to integrate some of their technology with human biology, to create soldiers capable of fighting threats beyond our normal capabilities." Director Miller stood up. "These are human beings who volunteered for experimental procedures. The program was shut down because it was deemed too dangerous and ethically questionable." "They weren't shut down," Stone corrected. "They were preserved. For exactly this kind of situation." The council president stared at the images. "Are you saying we have super soldiers on ice somewhere?" 12 of them, Stone confirmed. "The best volunteers our military had to offer, enhanced with integrated alien technology. We call them the Titans." "And you want to wake them up," Director Miller said, her voice hard with disapproval. Stone nodded. "They were created to defend humanity against advanced extraterrestrial threats. That threat is now here." Admiral Walker studied the hologram. "Why haven't I heard about this?" "Need to know," Stone replied. "The facility is hidden beneath the Arctic ice. Only 6 people on Earth knew about it until today." The council president rubbed his temples. "These soldiers, these Titans, have been in stasis for how long?" "Almost 60 years, Stone answered. "And if we wake them up now, will they be Stable? Director Miller cut in before Stone could answer. That's the problem. We don't know. The technology bonded with them in ways we didn't fully understand. That's why the program was officially discontinued. Stone's eyes narrowed. The Titans volunteered knowing the risks, and they're still our best chance of responding quickly to this attack. The room fell silent again as the council weighed the options. If we do nothing, Walker said finally, we risk losing more colonies before our fleet can even reach them. The president nodded slowly. General Stone, you have authorization to proceed with awakening the Titans. Director Miller, I want you to oversee the process. Miller's face tightened with disapproval, but she nodded. I'll need a transport to the Arctic facility immediately, she said. 12 hours later, Director Miller stood in a control room looking through thick glass at the stasis chamber below. Each pod was connected to a complex life support system that had kept its occupant in suspended animation for decades. Are you sure about this? She asked General Stone, who stood beside her. No, he admitted. But I'm sure about what happens if we do nothing. Miller sighed and turned to Dr. Kate Moore, the medical officer in charge of the facility. Start with just one, Miller ordered. Let's see if the awakening process even works after all this time. Dr. Moore nodded and began the revival sequence for Pod 1. Warning lights flashed as the stasis field began to power down. Inside the pod, the still figure of a man began to show signs of life. Monitoring screens showed a heartbeat accelerating, brain activity increasing. Normal revival patterns, Dr. Moore reported. No signs of rejection or system failure. The cider pod hissed open, releasing a cloud of cold vapor. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then a hand gripped the edge of the pod. A man sat up slowly, his movements careful but steady. He was tall, muscular, with close-cropped dark hair now streaked with gray. His eyes opened, revealing an unnatural blue glow around the pupils. Commander Gray, General Stone said, stepping forward. Welcome back. The man turned to look at Stone, his glowing eyes focusing with unsettling intensity. General, he said, his voice rough from disuse. Has it happened? Stone nodded grimly. Yes, Earth is under attack. Commander Alex Gray nodded once, as if he had expected nothing less. He glanced at the other pods where his team still slept. Wake them, he said. All of them. As the medical team began the process of awakening the other Titans, Miller watched with growing unease. They were playing with forces they didn't fully understand, awakening weapons that had been hidden away for good reason. But as reports continued to come in of colony after colony going silent, she knew they had no choice. Humanity needed its sleeping giants, whatever the cost might be. The Arctic facility hummed with activity as all 6 Titans were awakened from their decades-long sleep. Commander Alex Gray watched his team adjust to consciousness, his glowing blue eyes taking in every detail. Major Sam Harris was the second to awaken, a tall woman with dark skin and a suspicious nature. She flexed her hands, watching as faint lines of light moved beneath her skin. 60 years, she said quietly to Gray. Do you think we're still human? Gray didn't answer immediately. That question had bothered him since the program began. Human enough to remember our mission, he finally replied. Dr. Kate Moore moved between the Titans, checking vital signs and neural responses. The room was filled with the quiet beeping of medical equipment. Their integration is holding stable, she reported to Director Miller. The alien tech bonded to their cellular structure better than expected. Miller frowned. And their mental state? Clear and focused, Moore said. No signs of the aggression issues from the early trials. Still, Miller noticed how the facility staff kept their distance from the Titans. There was something unsettling about them, something beyond their glowing eyes and the strange patterns that occasionally flashed beneath their skin. Lieutenant John Parker entered the room, looking nervous. The young pilot had been assigned to transport the Titans to the combat zone, and he clearly wasn't comfortable with his new passengers. The Phantom is ready for departure, he announced, avoiding direct eye contact with Gray. Commander Gray nodded. We'll be ready in 2 hours. As the Titans prepared for deployment, Major Harris pulled Gray aside. I don't trust these people, she said in a low voice. Stone is using us just like he did before. We knew what we signed up for, Gray reminded her. Did we? They told us we'd be Earth's shield. Not that they'd freeze us until they needed living weapons. Gray looked at his second-in-command. Earth is under attack. That's all that matters now. Harris didn't look convinced, but she nodded and returned to her preparations. On New Eden Colony, the situation had gone from bad to worse. The aliens, now identified as the Vex by the colonists who had heard their communications, had established complete control of the surface. Most humans were confined to designated areas, while others remained hidden in the deeper shelter levels. Dr. Emma Wilson led one of these hidden resistance groups. Her laboratory knowledge had helped them bypass the colony's security systems, which the Vex now controlled. They're moving equipment into the research sector, reported Lieutenant Mark Davis, who had become her most reliable scout. Emma nodded. Are they still focusing on the propulsion labs? Yes. Whatever they're looking for, it's related to our drive systems. In the makeshift command center they had established in an old maintenance tunnel, Emma studied the data they had collected. The Vex were methodically extracting all information related to Earth's experimental faster-than-light drive. It doesn't make sense, she muttered. If their technology is advanced enough to defeat our defenses so easily, why? Would they care about our propulsion research? Maybe they're afraid of it, Davis suggested. Emma looked up. Afraid? Why would they fear technology that's inferior to theirs? Before Davis could answer, one of their lookouts rushed in. Governor Grant is being moved, the young man reported breathlessly. The aliens are taking him to the Central Administration building. Davis frowned. They must want something from him. Or they're using him as bait to draw us out, Emma said. Either way, they needed to know what was happening. Emma made a quick decision. Set up surveillance on the admin building. We need to hear what they're saying to him. Back on Earth, the Phantom stealth ship prepared for departure. The sleek black vessel was Earth's most advanced spacecraft, designed specifically to transport the Titans. Commander Gray stood in the ship's armory, examining the weapons laid out before him. Standard firearms would be useless against an enemy with superior technology. Instead, the Titans would rely on the weapons integrated into their own bodies. Gray raised his arm, watching as the skin and muscle restructured themselves, forming what looked like an organic cannon built into his forearm. It glowed with the same blue light as his eyes. Still gets my attention every time you do that, said Lieutenant Parker from the doorway. Gray lowered his arm, the weapon melting back into normal flesh. You get used to it, he said, though that wasn't entirely true. Even after all the modifications, the feeling of his body transforming still felt alien to him. We're ready for launch, Parker said. Admiral Walker wants a final briefing. In the ship's communication room, Admiral Walker's hologram addressed the team. The situation has deteriorated, he reported grimly. We've lost contact with 3 more colonies. The enemy is moving faster than we anticipated. What are our orders? Gray asked. Your primary mission is reconnaissance and rescue. Get to New Eden, assess the enemy's capabilities and extract any survivors you can, especially research personnel. Major Harris stepped forward. With respect, Admiral, we weren't designed for rescue operations. We're weapons. Walker's expression hardened. You're soldiers, Major. And soldiers follow orders. After the briefing ended, Dr. Moore conducted final checks on the Titan systems. As she examined Gray, she spoke quietly so others couldn't hear. The integration technology is still experimental, she warned him. Extensive use of your abilities could cause cellular degradation. How extensive? Gray asked. Moore hesitated. We don't know. The simulations suggest you have limits, but we never got to test them. Because they put us on ice, Gray finished for her. She nodded. Just be careful. Your bodies are still human, even with the modifications. An hour later, the Phantom broke Earth's atmosphere, its advanced stealth systems already active. As the blue planet shrank behind them, Gray looked at his team. 6 soldiers modified with technology humanity barely understood, heading to fight an enemy they knew nothing about. "This is what we were made for," he told them as they gathered in the ship's briefing room. "Whatever these aliens want from our colonies, we're going to make them regret coming after humanity." On New Eden, Governor Grant stood before a tall, slender figure whose body seemed to shift between solid and translucent states. The Vex commander's voice was a strange combination of mechanical sounds and something almost musical. "You will provide access to all research on dimensional folding propulsion," the alien said. Grant stood his ground. "I've told you, that research is theoretical. We have no working prototypes." The alien's form rippled with what might have been anger. "Your species does not understand what it is developing. You are playing with forces that will bring death to this entire sector." Unknown to either of them, Emma's surveillance device captured every word. In her hidden base, she listened with growing concern. "They're not after our technology to use it," she realized. "They're trying to stop us from using it." Davis frowned. "But why?" Before Emma could answer, another scout burst in. "Unidentified ship approaching the colony. It's not Vex design." Across the colony, Vex alert systems began to sound. The counterattack had begun. The Phantom ship slipped through the outer defenses of New Eden Colony without detection. Lieutenant Parker's skilled piloting and the vessel's advanced stealth technology kept them invisible to the Vex scanners. From the command deck, Commander, Gray watched the alien ships patrolling above the colony. "Their technology is unlike anything in our records," he said. "But there's something familiar about the energy signatures." Major Harris nodded. "I was thinking the same thing. It's similar to our own modifications." Gray turned to the ship's communication officer. "Any response to our encrypted signal?" "Yes, sir. We're receiving coordinates for a landing zone. Looks like someone's still fighting down there." The Phantom descended through the colony's thin atmosphere, landing in a hidden ravine 2 miles from the main settlement. As the ship's ramp lowered, the Titans readied themselves for their first real combat mission. "Remember," Gray told his team, "we're not here to start a war. Reconnaissance first, then contact any resistance, assess the situation, and plan accordingly." Major Harris checked her weapon systems one last time. "And if we encounter heavy resistance?" Gray's eyes glowed brighter. "Then we show them why waking us was their biggest mistake." On the colony surface, Dr. Emma Wilson and Lieutenant Davis led a small team to meet the Earthship. They moved carefully through maintenance tunnels that ran beneath the colony, avoiding Vex patrols. "Do you really think Earth sent help already?" Davis asked as they crawled through a narrow passage. "It's only been 5 days since the attack." Emma shook her head. "Either they had a response team very close, or they sent something very fast. Either way, I'm not complaining." When they finally reached the ravine, they were surprised to find only 6 individuals waiting for them. Even more surprising was their appearance. Tall, imposing figures with eyes that glowed in the dim light. "Dr. Wilson?" asked their leader, stepping forward. "I'm Commander Gray. Earth sent us to help." Emma stared at them. "Just 6 of you?" "We're a special response unit," Gray replied simply. Davis studied them suspiciously. "What kind of special unit?" Instead of answering, Gray held up his arm. Before their eyes, his skin seemed to ripple and change, forming what looked like a weapon built into his forearm. "The kind that brings enough firepower to make a difference," he said. Emma's scientific curiosity immediately overrode her shock. "How is that possible? Your bodies have been integrated with technology?" Major Harris gave a cold smile. "You could say we're Earth's best-kept secret until now." They made their way back to the resistance base through the tunnels. Once there, Emma shared everything they had learned about the Vex. "They're specifically targeting our propulsion research," she explained, showing Gray the data they had collected. "At first we thought they wanted to steal it, but now I think they're trying to destroy it." "What makes you say that?" Gray asked. "We managed to record a conversation between their commander and Governor Grant." Emma played the recording, and they all listened to the Vex commander's warning about humans playing with forces that will bring death. Gray and Harris exchanged a look. "You know something," Emma said, noticing their reaction. "What is it?" Gray hesitated, then nodded. "The technology that was used to modify us came from an alien wreckage found in the Kuiper Belt 80 years ago. The propulsion system on that ship used principles similar to what you've been researching." Emma's eyes widened. "So the technology the Vex are afraid of is related to what's inside you?" "Possibly," Gray admitted, "but we need more information before we jump to conclusions." At that moment, one of Emma's team rushed in. "Vex forces are gathering at the main square. They've got Governor Grant with them, and they're broadcasting a message across the colony." They gathered around a salvaged monitor to watch. In the colony's central plaza, Governor Grant stood beside the Vex commander. The alien's form shifted, constantly, never quite settling into a solid shape. "People of New Eden," Grant began, his voice strained. "The Vex wish to communicate their intentions. They want you to understand why they came." The Vex commander stepped forward, its voice translated through a device it held. "Your species has discovered principles of space-time manipulation that led to the destruction of our home system," it said. "The technology you call dimensional folding creates ripples in reality that attract them." "Who are they?" Emma whispered. As if hearing her question, the Vex continued. "The Void Eaters. Ancient entities that consume stars and worlds. Our civilization was nearly destroyed when our scientists developed similar technology. We detected your experiments and came to stop you before you bring the same fate upon yourselves." In the Ionium resistance base, silence fell as they absorbed this information. "They're not invaders," Davis said finally. "They think they're saving us from something worse." Gray's expression darkened. "Or that's what they want us to believe." Just then, a communication came through from Earth. Admiral Walker's face appeared on a secure channel. "Commander Gray, we've received information you need to hear," Walker said grimly. "Ambassador Turner has made contact with another alien species calling themselves the Krell. They claim the Vex are fugitives, criminals who destroyed their own world through reckless experiments and are now trying to prevent other species from advancing." Gray frowned. "So we have two alien species telling contradictory stories." "Intelligence Officer Ross has been analyzing both claims," Walker continued. "He's decoded more of the Vex language from the New Eden communications. There's a pattern that suggests they're genuinely afraid of something." Emma looked thoughtful. "If the Vex really were running from something they awakened, then why attack us instead of warning us?" Harris finished. "Maybe they tried," Emma suggested. "We don't exactly have a first contact protocol that works." Gray turned to his team. "We need to establish direct communication with the Vex commander. If there's a real threat out there, we need to know what we're dealing with." Intelligence Officer Mike Ross joined the call from Earth. "There's more," he said. "We've detected unusual energy readings at the edge of our solar system. Something large is moving toward us, and it's not using any propulsion system we understand." The implications hung in the air. If the Vex were telling the truth, humanity might have already attracted the attention of something terrible. "How do we proceed?" Harris asked Gray. Gray looked at the screens showing the Vex forces, then at his own hand where lines of alien technology pulsed beneath his skin. "We make contact," he decided. "Not as enemies, but not as friends either. We need the truth, and we need it now." Emma nodded in agreement. "I can help arrange a meeting with their commander. Governor Grant will cooperate if he believes it can prevent further violence." As they prepared for the dangerous mission, Engineer Ben Clark, one of Emma's resistance members, approached Gray privately. "Those modifications you have," he said quietly. "They're generating a unique energy signature. I've been monitoring it since you arrived." Gray tensed. "What about it?" "It's broadcasting," Clark said simply. "Not just here, but outward, into deep space." Gray stared at him, the full implications hitting home. If the Vex were right about the danger, then the Titans themselves might be calling it directly to Earth. Commander Gray stared at his hands, watching the faint blue lines of alien technology pulse beneath his skin. Engineer Clark's revelation that the Titans were broadcasting a signal into deep space changed everything. "How long have you known about this?" Gray asked Clark. "I only confirmed it after analyzing your energy signatures for the past few hours," the engineer replied. "The signal is subtle but constant." Major Harris joined them, her expression grim. "If what the Vex say is true, we could be bringing these Void Eaters right to Earth." Gray made his decision quickly. "We need to meet with the Vex commander immediately." Dr. Emma Wilson arranged the meeting through Governor Grant. 2 hours later, they stood in an abandoned warehouse at the edge of the colony. Gray and Harris represented the Titans, while Emma and Lieutenant Davis came for the Resistance. The air shimmered, and 3 Vex appeared. Their leader, Commander Drac, was taller than the others, its form shifting between solid and translucent states. "You wish to speak," the alien said, its voice a strange combination of mechanical sounds and musical tones. "Why should we listen?" Gray stepped forward. "Because we may have a common enemy." He explained what Engineer Clark had discovered about the signal coming from the Titan's modifications. The Vex commander moved closer, studying Gray with what seemed like intense interest. "Show me," Drac demanded. Gray hesitated, then held out his arm. The skin rippled, revealing the integrated weapon system beneath. The Vex made a sound that might have been alarm. "You carry death within you," Drac said. "The same technology that brought the Void Eaters to our world." "We didn't know," Gray replied. "The modifications were based on technology we found from a crashed ship." The Vex seemed to confer among themselves in their own language. Finally, Drac turned back to the humans. "The ship you found was one of ours," the alien revealed. "A research vessel that disappeared 80 years ago by your counting. It was contaminated with void energy after our first encounter with the Eaters." Emma stepped forward. "Then help us understand. What are these Void Eaters? How do we stop them?" "They exist between realities," Drac explained. "They feed on the energy released when the walls between dimensions are breached. Your dimensional folding research creates exactly such breaches." Harris looked at Gray. "And our modifications? They contain elements that resonate across dimensions," Drac said, "like a beacon in the dark." Before anyone could respond, an emergency call came through from Lieutenant Parker on the Phantom. "Commander, we're detecting a massive energy distortion at the edge of the system," Parker reported, his voice tight with fear. "It's unlike anything I've ever seen." Chief Engineer Laura Wright from Earth joined the communication. "All our stations are picking it up too," she said. "Something is trying to break through into our space." Gray looked at the Vex commander. "How much time do we have?" "Hours, perhaps," Drac replied. "They move quickly once they find a breach point." "What can we do?" Emma asked. "Your modified bodies must be shut down," Drac said to Gray. "The signal must be stopped." Gray exchanged looks with Harris. They both understood what that meant, returning to cryostasis, or worse. "If we do this," Gray said, "will your forces stop attacking our colonies?" "Yes," Drac replied. "We came only to prevent the greater threat." As they discussed their options, a new ship entered the system. It was an Earth diplomatic vessel carrying Ambassador Turner and Colonel David West with reinforcement troops. After being briefed on the situation, Colonel West was skeptical. "For all we know, this could be an elaborate trick," he said, eyeing the Vex distrustfully. Ambassador Turner was more pragmatic. "Whether it's true or not, we have an unknown entity approaching our system. We need to prepare for all possibilities." One of the Vex stepped forward, a scientist named Mord, who had been analyzing data from the edge of the system. "It is too late for simple preparations," Mord said, showing them readings on a device. "The breach has begun, but there may be another way." The alien scientist explained that the Vex had been developing technology to close dimensional breaches after their own world was attacked. "We never completed it," Mord said. "But with your understanding of the technology and your modified soldiers, we might be able to finish it." Dr. Emma Wilson's eyes lit up with scientific curiosity and determination. "A reverse pulse to seal the breach? Theoretically possible, but the power requirements would be enormous. We can provide the power, Gray said quietly. Through us. Everyone looked at him. The modifications, he explained. If they can broadcast a signal that attracts these things, they can be reconfigured to send a signal that repels them. Major Harris nodded in understanding. We become the weapon against them, not for them. Dr. Wilson and the Vex scientist Mord immediately began working on the calculations, while Colonel West prepared Earth's forces for the worst-case scenario. Hours later, as a strange darkness began to spread across the stars at the edge of the system, they were ready to attempt their desperate plan. The 6 Titans stood in a circle, connected to equipment hastily built from a combination of human and Vex technology. Around them, former enemies now worked together, human colonists alongside Vex engineers. This will likely burn out your modifications, Mord warned Gray. The energy release could damage your biological systems as well. Gray nodded. We understood the risks when we volunteered long ago. Governor Grant, who had been helping coordinate the colony's resources, approached Gray before they began. When this is over, he said, Earth and the Vex need to establish real communication. No more secrets, no more fear. If we survive, Gray replied with a grim smile. The darkness at the edge of the system grew, stars disappearing one by one as something massive began to push through the fabric of reality. Now, Dr. Wilson called, activating the device. Energy surged through the Titans, their bodies becoming conduits for a power greater than anything they had channeled before. Blue light erupted from their eyes, and the lines beneath their skin blazed like fire. Gray felt his modifications burning, systems overloading as they broadcast the carefully calculated signal toward the breach. Through the pain, he saw Major Harris smiling beside him, a warrior's smile in the face of their greatest battle. In space, the darkness paused its advance, then began to contract. The breach was closing, the entity on the other side pushed back into its own reality. As consciousness began to fade, Gray heard the Vex scientist's voice. It's working. When Gray awoke days later, he found himself in a medical bay. Dr. Wilson stood beside his bed, her face tired but smiling. Did we succeed? He asked. She nodded. The breach is closed. The Void Eaters, as the Vex call them, have been pushed back. The others? Gray tried to sit up but found himself too weak. Recovering like you, she said. Your modifications are gone, burned out in the process. You're fully human again. Gray looked at his arm, seeing only normal skin where the alien technology had once pulsed. Outside the window of the medical bay, he could see humans and Vex working together to rebuild the colony. Ambassador Turner was overseeing the beginnings of a formal peace agreement. So what happens now? Gray asked. Now we learn from each other, Emma replied. The Vex have knowledge about the dangers between dimensions, and we have determination they admire. Together, we might be able to create real defenses against the Void Eaters, should they ever find another way through. Gray closed his eyes, feeling a strange mix of loss and relief. The mission he had been created for was complete. The war was over before it truly began, and humanity had found not an enemy in the stars, but an ally born from shared danger. The sleeping giants had